Hey everyone, welcome to another video. Today I'm going to be doing a little bit of a theory video on the last one. I say theory video, really it's more of a, this is what happened in the book, this is how it goes along with the rest of the story. I will also reference this book when I make my long bendy timeline, which is in a work in progress. But anyway, so let's start talking about the newest bendy book. So, basically, the Lost Ones book is about these three 17-year-old kids, as I will refer to them as, who live in Atlantic City, which is in New Jersey, which happens to be right across the river from New York, which is where we know the Bendy Studio is. I'm sorry, JoJo's Studio. Why did I call it the Bendy Studio? Anyway, regardless of what the studio is called, they are in Atlantic City, New Jersey. The story switches between the different perspectives of each of the three characters, which in this book is Bill, Constance, and Brant. Each of them have their own problems, but doesn't everyone? Oh, and another thing, Bill is short for William, which doesn't make much sense in any universe, but hey, I didn't vet the nicknames of the world, so Bill. Yep. Anyway, so let's talk about Bill here. Bill's father, Mr. Chambers, owns most of Atlantic City. And Bill does not want that. He doesn't. I mean, who doesn't want to grow up in the lap of luxury? But he just kind of wants to be his own person. And as you'll see, as I keep talking, that every one of these characters has some problem they got to resolve. And they do, kind of, until they all die at the end. Spoiler alert! Yes, if you're watching this video, and you haven't read the book, I don't know what you're thinking, because obviously I'm going to have spoilers. I gotta explain the book, that way I can explain my theories. Where was I? Ah, yes. Bill. Anyway, so, eventually, Bill becomes an apprentice to Scott, who works for Gent. Gent's headquarters is in New Jersey, in Atlantic City. Mr. Tom Connors is the head of Gent, and he is in Atlantic City right now. He got fired from JoJo Studios, and then he got rehired. It's a whole mess. And then he got fired again. Yep. And thus is the circle of business. So a reference back to the first story when, I don't know if you've read Dreams Come to Life, but in it, Tom does get fired, so apparently he got rehired. And when he got rehired, they had the bright idea to move the ink machine from New York to the underground of Atlantic City. So, it's also the smaller ink machine, not the giant one, the smaller one that we see in Chapter 1. I say smaller compared to the one in Chapter 5 that is massive. Another thing I forgot to mention, that this takes place in October of 1946, and we know that Dreams Come to Life took place in the summer of 1946. So, this is kind of right after that story took place. So, to put that into a big perspective for you all. Okay, at one point in the story, Bill is asked to help Mr. Connors with the ink machine. And then after he does that, Mr. Connors tells him to not tell anyone. And we know how people are. When you are told not to do something, that is the one thing that you will set out to do. But, more on that later, I gotta talk about the other two characters. Honestly, I did not like this book as much as the first one because we have so many different perspectives and everyone's got their problems. So much exposition. Anyway, so, now on to Constance. So, Constance has a bit of a complicated story. So, I'm just going to start from the beginning. At the beginning of the story, they are filming a movie and her sister was acting in the movie, her older sister, but she got sick. And, because of reasons, Constance decided to help with this one scene. This one scene is a horse diving. Whatever you think it is, you're probably right. It is. Wait for it. A girl in a bathing suit atop a horse diving into a pool about 60 feet in the air. Fun stuff, really, and it's October, so you know the water's going to be cold. So, she's doing that at the beginning of the story. Anyway, to say thank you, her older sister, whose name's Molly, gives her this chemistry set, because Constance likes science and stuff. Anyway, she also has this job at this theater, helping the chorus girls behind stage change outfits, do hair, do makeup, do all that stuff. So she also does that. And she also offers the stage manager that she will use her chemistry set to make smoke. That will not be sticky or stinky or make you have to wash the costumes 3 billion times before you finally get out that smell. And then it's always there, it just kind of smells all musty. You know what I mean? Anyway, so yes, she offers to do that. And of course she doesn't, because she ends up getting a boyfriend, and we could go into details about that, but that's not really important. Point is, she dumps him at the end of the story, but we'll get to that in a second. Anyway, eventually this boyfriend of hers goes on some vacation, and she manages to do her little smoke experiment, and she gets that good cash. And then after she does that, Bill asks her to see the ink machine. So, and then we'll go more about that right after I explain Brant's story, which is a lot shorter than the other two. Okay, so Brant is he's super poor. His parents died. We don't know how. It's more, I kind of get like a Peter Parker kind of vibe from that. And he's living with his aunt and uncle. So he's super poor, and he works for the newspaper. And he's trying to get a story. So he makes friends with Bill, although at the beginning it's more just to get information for his story. Sorry. But eventually he does become friends with Bill. And basically most of the story is just him kind of snooping around. And he does snoop his way into seeing the ink machine. So, here we are. I've been talking about the ink machine. So, everyone gets to see the ink machine. And they release all this ink into this kind of underground warehouse area. And Brant gets consumed by the ink. And Bill and Constance have to run away. Now, as the story progresses, it's mostly just her, Constance and Bill, kind of their perspective of the story until later, and I'll talk about that in a quick second. But as they're progressing, Constance is kind of having these spikes of rage, and Bill is just thinking he's really scared about stuff for no reason at all, and it's probably because they got exposed to the ink. That's what the book hints at. Okay, so fast forward a little bit. Constance makes this antidote because she got a sample of the ink off of her clothes because, ink stains. It'll never come out. So she gets a sample of that and makes an antidote. And later on in the story, there's this ink creature that's kind of stalking them. And eventually they see this ink creature and it wants the antidote, so they give it to him. Plot twist, it is Brant. And if you're mad at me, you're like, hey, this is a spoiler. Dude, I'm explaining the story. What did you think I was going to do? There's no way to explain the story and not spoil it. Anyway, so they got Brant back, and he feels really guilty about kind of lying to Bill about being his friend, even though he kind of wasn't at the beginning. And I don't know if it was before that happened or after that happened, but sometime Constance just dumps this boyfriend of hers so hard. Good for her. Real nice. We all know you could do it. Anyway, we got Brant back, and they're going to go all just destroy the ink machine. Something else I forgot to mention, I think it was right before they got Brant back. Bill went to this party because, he's rich and his father's rich. So he's got to go to these parties, make an appearance, even though he feels like garbage. And Allison is there, so they did rehire her. And for those of you who haven't read Dreams Come to Life, they do fire her and Tom at a party. So what is it with these people in parties? My God. Now, of course, it is the 1940s. That was entertainment back then. If you were rich. If you were poor, your entertainment was... You know that ball game where it's like the ball and the cup? I want to say it's ball and cup. Yeah, that was poor people's entertainment. Anyway, we're getting off track. So we're all caught up with Allison's back, Tom's back. They rehired everyone. They're probably not going to rehire Susie. I'm kind of guessing that they may or may not be... Like, Joey might have turned her into Twisted Alice by now. I'm not entirely sure. I really don't know. But anyway, they go off to destroy the ink machine. And I can kind of stop here because, you know, when you do a summary, you don't really ruin the ending for everyone. So I'm going to stop here, and I think we can all guess that it didn't work because, you know, we have Bendy in the ink machine game for a reason. If they destroyed the ink machine, I mean, we wouldn't really have that amazing game. Thank you, the Meatly. Now, what's the lesson of this story? I think we can all agree it's don't trust Joey. Sorry, I'm stuttering a little bit. Don't trust Joey is the lesson here, obviously. But you know, from the book, I think it's also don't touch black liquid. Even if it's water, don't touch it. I have this rule. If it ain't water, don't drink it. Well, I know they didn't drink it, but you know, if you see a weird liquid, what's the first thing you think? I should touch it. Yeah. That's also a lesson. What else? Ah, yes. When you're told not to do something, that is the one thing that you will most likely go out to do. Yep. Lots of good lessons from this story. We really learned something, didn't we? Okay, so now, theories. This is going to be somewhat short because, well, I'm going to make a Bendy timeline. It might take me a while because I'm going to read the last book, which is just Joey's little memoir, The Illusion of Living, which is, let me tell you about The Illusion of Living. It is exactly how I imagine a memoir would be. Long, my God. But I'm going to read it, see if there's any important dates. If you guys know if there's important dates in there, let me know. If there's not, then also let me know. That way I can make this timeline, which will probably be easier because I'm really good at making timelines. Anyway, so what happens? So I'm going to talk about what happened before in Dreams Come to Life. So if you don't want to see this part because it'll give away too much, then go ahead. I'm going to post another theory video on Dreams Come to Life later. Anyway, so I'm thinking that they probably created the ink machine in 1945. Let's say mid-1945. Somewhere in 1945. And they created Bendy, and he was soulless. So slowly they started using human experiments, which aroused a little bit of suspicion, obviously. But hey, it's Joey Drew Studio. What are you going to do? Anyway, I'm thinking by the beginning of 1946... I'm thinking like at the beginning of 1946, they made Susie, which would make sense because shortly after that, in the summer of 1946, Buddy got exposed to the ink and he became the perfect Boris clone. I'm thinking after that, they just whipped out Boris clone after Boris clone after Boris clone. And I'm also theorizing that the way you are exposed to the ink is a factor on how exactly you turn out in the end, because we know Sammy was drinking ink, which was dumb of him. And, of course, the pipe burst on him. And he turned into basically a lost one. Kind of, but not really. So he was kind of a lost one. So I'm thinking that if you have the ink in a controlled, stable environment, and Tom does his little thing, I don't really know, that if you do it the right way, that you will get a perfect Boris clone or a perfect Alice clone. They actually only made one. As far as we're aware, we're going to be seeing what happens in Bendy and the Dark Revival. When I'm doing guesswork, I'm kind of rambling a little bit. Anyway, so we know by the summer of 1945 they could make a perfect Boris clone. So, and then, you know, they did fire Tom, but they rehired him. And when they rehired him, I say they, I mostly mean Joey. I know I keep saying they. Anyway, Joey rehired Tom, and Tom moved the ink machine to Atlantic City to fix it, because they were probably arousing way too much suspicion. So, I'm thinking shortly after what happened to the Lost Ones happened, he brought it back to New York. And, you know, what followed was whipping Boris clone after Boris clone after Boris clone after Boris clone, because there are so many freaking Boris clones in that studio. None alive. We only see 2 alive. The others are dead. Anyway, and then after that, shortly, there's a lot of financial downfall, and everyone gets fired, but, you know, Tom and Allison get married, but then they become the perfect Alice and Tom, but Tom Boris, but without an arm. I know that's a bit confusing, so basically, to summarize, somewhere before 1946, they made the ink machine, and slowly they got better, and by the summer of 1946, they could make a Boris clone, but then Tom got fired, but he got rehired, and by the fall of 1946, they moved the ink machine back to New York. Or maybe it's winter. It's kind of hard to tell, because, like, they do mention how cold it is, but it's kind of hard to know specific dates, especially when it's in the same year. And I'm rambling, but when I have notes. I plan to make somewhat of a script for when I do this bendy timeline. That way you are not confused. Man, that was a mouthful to say. Anyway, hope that was somewhat helpful, and I hope you enjoyed the video. So, thanks for watching. Please consider subscribing. I will try and make that Dreams Come to Life kind of overview as quickly as possible. And I know at the beginning I said that it was a theory video, but I don't really go off a script. I just kind of say what I think, kind of. And this was less of a theory video and more of a this is what happened. Okay, thanks for watching, and I probably will use a script for when I do the timeline. Maybe not for when I do the overview of Dreams Come to Life, because I tend to ramble a little bit. And I'm sorry that this is the same picture, like I said earlier. I may have not said it earlier, but I am sorry that it's just the same picture. It's iMovie. What am I going to do? It's the only quote-unquote film platform that I have that in stop motion. So, anyway, I will try and get the Dreams Come to Life overview out as quickly as possible, and then I'll also make the bendy timeline. That could take me a while since I still got to read Joey Drew's memoir. Ah, man, it is a long book. Anyway, I'm sorry, I'm doing it again. I'm talking, and this conversation isn't really going anywhere. Thank you for watching. Please give me a like. Please consider subscribing, and my next video will probably be me passing some harsh judgment on a video that is garbage. Just kidding about that last part, but not really.